On June 5th, 2018, I received this message. Hello, I know this may be weird to receive, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have the same father. 3 months ago, my sister and I were told by our mother that our father had a daughter before they were married. I was only told a couple names and a rough date, so I've been torn on if I should reach out or not. Before I go any further, I do want to say that I will respect it if you want nothing to do with this at all. I know this may be a bit much and out of the blue. I just want to reach out to you to say hi because we may actually be related. I have one sister that's 2 years older than me, but otherwise, that is it. Like I said, I do understand if you want nothing to do with me at this point. I just wanted to do my part in putting out a branch in the off chance you wanted one. As a child, you prepare for quicksand and the floor turning into lava, but you don't prepare yourself for reaching out to potential family. So I do apologize if this is handled poorly. I have no clue how else to do this. I do hope this was a positive message experience and not traumatizing. I hope the rest of your Tuesday goes well. So that is how the news was brought to me that I had a surprise sister. And I remember this Tuesday like it was yesterday. I was sitting at work and I handled social media for clients and those types of things. I work in PR and communications, and this message pops up and I read it. And I'm like, well, this is a crazy person reaching out. Like, why would this person be reaching out to my client and telling them this? And then all of a sudden I looked and I was like, no, this is your personal Facebook. And I thought, what in the world? And like I had mentioned before, like I got kind of like hot, like I got like a panic attack, little like because I didn't know what to do or how to process. And I knew I was going to start crying. And so I walked into my boss because it wasn't quite lunchtime yet. And I walked into my boss and I was like, I think I need to take a walk. And she was like, why? I just remember her like, why? Why do you want to go take a walk? Because it was Nashville and it was June and it was hotter than blazes and humid and gross. And I said, I think I have a sister that just reached out to me on Facebook. And she was like, you take that walk. Like,
Please, please take that walk.
she's like, you take that walk. And I was like, yeah. And at that point, I was dating my now husband, and we normally did lunch together 1 day a week. And that was our day to do lunch.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so we were eating our Chick-fil-A at this in the state of Tennessee, because that's where he worked in the tower. And I read it to him and he was like, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do? And well, I guess I need to let her know that, you know, I'm here, like I'm a human. I don't know. So I responded, and it was probably a couple hours later that I responded because I had to like one, I was working, right? And I had to process because in the beginning when I read it, I kind of just put it off to the side. I thought you were reaching out to one of my clients, like a music artist or somebody, right? Saying, hey, I think I'm your sister. And to me, I was like, she crazy,
Yeah, this
right?
crazy fan.
Yeah. And then I realized, nope. So I responded, hi, Cayla. I'm not really sure what to say either. So to have both of us speechless was already quite remarkable. I heard from my mom that my biological father had two daughters that were younger to me, and that's all I've ever known. To be honest, I've always wanted to look for you guys, but also want to be respectful that you guys may have not have known about me. And you responded pretty quickly. Is it just me, or is this maybe the weirdest situation ever? And thus, a great friendship was born.
Oh man.
But
I
we did. We have like messages. I mean,
novels.
novels of messages. And when I go back and read these, I already like could hear like tones of us, you know, popping in, like how similar we are, how we talk about things. Like, hey, I know this, but I'm going to pull it back just a little bit because I don't want to offend you. I don't want to hurt your feelings. Like, I want you to know, like, it's okay. However you're feeling, feel your feelings. And I feel like we both do that quite a bit. And
Oh
so
yeah.
it's just amazing when we start going through, um, you know, but you did say that, for reference, I was born in 1993 and my sister was born in 1991. And um, because you said something to the effect of, your sister is only a couple years older than you, whatever. And so when I said 1993, I was like, well, she's only a couple years older than you. It's not me because I was born in 86. And so um, my
Yeah. Did
response
it right.
was,
I was told I had the wrong one.
yeah, I basically was like, sorry, kid,
What
different.
are the odds? But no, it's not me.
What are the odds you have a sister from your dad that you never met? But it's not me, even though I have the same situation. And I just remember going, oh my God, she's gonna think I'm so dumb. Like she's gonna think I'm a lunatic because I don't know how to read. And I just had to say, you know what? My brain is not working on all cylinders right now
Because an age in your life of me.
and I think we spent like the rest of that afternoon messaging each other. And I think from there, like it wasn't nonstop, but it was, you know, you were very great at, what do you want to know? Like, what can I do? But that day was such a process because that was shortly after my birthday and my mom had come down. And she had met for the first time. She met my now husband for the first time that trip. And I moved into this apartment. Like we had all these things going, like life was like in high gear, all these things. And she had just left. And I called her. I said, so this girl reached out to me, and you'll never guess what she had to say. And her, like, what she alluded to was, oh, Troy's cheating on you. I'm so sorry to hear this. And I said, no. She said she's my sister. And she went, oh,
I wasn't ready for that. That's the same thing Bryson did when I
mhm.
mentioned last episode of he's like, well, I wasn't prepared to hear that. I but
Yeah, it was like, oh, didn't know this was going to happen. Definitely didn't think that was going to happen today. And she said, what do you think you want to do? Or what do you think, you know, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I messaged her back. And because at that point, I didn't know anything. I didn't know my biological father's name. I knew, like I had told you, that he had had other children. And you can also kind of assume that this person grows up, they get married, they have other children. Like you can, kind of surmise that because that's life.
yeah.
Um, but I had no clue and about names, locations, anything else. And so when you came in and were like, hey, I'm here. And it was so kind and respectful the way you reached out that it made it an easier process, I think, than what it could have been. That is for sure. Um, but I couldn't imagine like it was like, yo, I'm your sister. You want to hang? Like,
Which is kind of what it turned into in the end.
yeah,
Was hey, wanna hang? What's up? We're related, but we eased into that.
for sure.
What was how would you describe, I couldn't even imagine if I could find words for it, but how would you describe your emotions, your feelings of, was it just numb, overwhelming? I need to go take a walk. Or what were your real, if you had to stop and look back now,
Yeah.
really
I
feeling?
would I would say it was 100% shock, right? Because like I had said, always in the back of my brain that I know that this was a possibility, that there were people out there, but you weren't real. You didn't have names, you didn't have locations. Like it wasn't a real thing. It was just a very abstract thought and feeling. Um, and so never thought you guys would reach out. I never thought I would try to find you. Because I didn't know what you knew or didn't know. And just wasn't even in my realm of thinking.
You
So
also
when
didn't
I
have the resources to find us, come to think, because
mm-mm,
I also was already married. So I
mm,
didn't even have the same last name I used to at that point. And my sister was getting married that same month that I
yeah,
reached out. So her last name changed within 2 weeks of that message. So I don't know if you would have even found us, because we were also born in, each of us were born in a different state.
mm, yeah,
So I don't know if you could have found us,
yeah, I don't know. I would have had to trace it back from him,
but you didn't
but I
have.
didn't know the name either. I didn't
Yeah,
know any. Um, and so I never really thought it was a possibility. And like I said, my life and a lot of changes going on. I knew I was with, the person I was going to marry. We had just gotten, an apartment, doing all these things. I was working. I was in a, trying to live my quote unquote grown up life. Um, so I wasn't expecting it at all, but I just remember feeling like really hot, like getting really like flushed and just not knowing how to process, like having a bunch of like thoughts and feelings going off at one time, but not being able to grab a hold of any of them. And so going and saying, hey, like, I need to take a walk. I need to get out of here. I need to process. And then being able to have even just that lunch hour with Troy to sit down and have a conversation was really good to have, because he was like, whatever you want to do, I support you. If you want to grow a relationship with her, if you don't, whatever you want, you have people in your corner. And I was like, well, I think I need to, at least respond and um, see who this person is, because I didn't know who you were. You could have been crazy too, right?
right.
So, yeah, it was just all around just a crazy feeling. And then my mom going, okay. I think that was the first time she was like, okay, this is real. I'm going to have to actually have this conversation with her now at 34, 33, 34 years old, that, this is what happened. Um, because we never had that conversation. So it just was a whole new way of life. It was like the life that we had known before was kind of over, and now it was time to start a whole new family, basically. And we didn't know that's really what it was at the time, I guess. But it was, be cautious, be careful, don't grow too attached. You don't know who this person is. Um, but still go and figure it out, like feel it out for yourself. Like, don't let me stop you. And I think that gave me, as weird as it sounds, permission to, knowing that I had my mom and my significant other in my corner, that really gave me permission to explore what kind of relationship, friendship, whatever, that you and I could have.
I just can't imagine being Troy and just sitting down of like, oh my God, I just moved in with this lady.
And he technically hadn't really actually moved in yet. Like he was staying, but he still went home because he still had his own lease. So he would go home every once in a while.
So
Um,
scale of I'm progressing with this woman,
yeah.
and her world was just flipped upside down an hour ago.
And so was his, because in fairness, it was like that same week he went to the eye doctor and they're like, okay, you need a cornea transplants. Like, so you're gonna be blind for a little while. We're gonna and give you new eyes. And so like we had all this coming in
Oh,
like one foul swoop. And I in a way, like I'm glad it happened like that because it really did band us together and really solidify, dude, we can get through anything, you know. Really helped prepare us for COVID, that's for sure. Um, but just that you know that you have a team member. And so when you know you're not going into the unknown alone, it makes things a lot easier. And like you say, I'm very grateful that I had people in my corner that supported. I had another friend too down there. Her name's Christy, and she's just fabulous. Everybody, you can't not love Christy. But she was like, this is amazing. Yes, let's do this. And she was so supportive and encouraging about, build the relationship that you want. Like something really cool could come from this. Like build the relationship you want to have with her. And just being that cheerleader on the sidelines was really awesome to have too.
super cool. You had this network of, no matter what you decided to do, I don't know what I would have done um on the receiving end of that. But it's super cool that you had already built this world around you
Mhm.
that wanted your support, that wanted your success and your happiness
Yeah.
in what could be a very traumatic moment.
Yeah. And I think too, like having those people um, like you say, my friend Christy, she's just a ray of sunshine. So having that, yes, this could go totally wrong, blow up in your face, and she could murder you, but chances are she's not. And you're going to end up with a really good friend and just go in there with that attitude. Really, I think changed how I perceived the situation and made it change how I talked to you and how we messaged. And because we messaged for quite a while before we ever talked on the phone or FaceTime, I felt like we really eased into building a relationship.
Yeah. And I think it was that same first day we essentially sat down and said, what do you want from this? Why are we doing this? I think it really was within the first handful of messages of, why are we even here? Let's establish this now. What are you looking for?
We were able to kind of establish our hopes pretty quickly. But I think that was again was because of the way you approached the conversation to begin with, how you open, like, listen, I know this is wild, this is crazy. Let's take it at the pace we want to take it. If you don't want this, we don't have to do it. Like there was never any pressure from either side.
I think us going in without, I had expectations, I'm not going to lie, but I was working very hard on being mindful of you. So, something that's not uncommon with me, which I kind of feel like I got from you too, is that there's like, it can be overwhelming and we just kind of put a lot out there. And then it's like, oh crap, maybe you can't handle that. Let's reel some of this back in as fast as we can. So it was, hey, I'm your sister, but if you don't want to be, that's fine. Hey, but I really would like to meet with you, but if you really don't want to, that's fine.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of, I felt like that's normally how I approach anyway. Even with my job, is I pound you with like, I drop this bomb of information and knowledge, and then it's like, most people can't handle that. That's a little overwhelming. Let me kind of take this back a little bit. And I think we both were able to reel in just enough that there wasn't pressure, there wasn't um a forced expectation that we had to live up to. It was I think my exact words were like, "Yeah, I'm fine if we become, like, as close as cousins are. Like, we're family, but we weren't raised together, so we're not sisters." I think I used cousins.
Yeah.
Um,
Like you're
it-
like we're acquaintances. Like we could just, Facebook friends. Like,
right, I was like, "Let's just be."
yeah. There were like different levels offered and suggested, and I didn't know, right? Like I didn't know. And at the same time though, like as I've shared before, I have my makeshift family, right? Like I have, my mom too, my sister. So it wasn't completely foreign to me to be like, cool, I got another one.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but I didn't want to just assume you were like the rest of us because I know not everybody in the world is like me and they don't think like me. And so I didn't want to, you know, also come across desperate or like I was crazy. It was more like, oh, I don't want her to think I'm crazy. I want her to like me. I liken it a lot to like online dating, if you will.
Yeah.
Because you see a picture of someone and you're like, ooh, I'd like to get to know them. And the first couple messages, like you play it, like say if you play it coy, because you don't want to be like, what do you want? Do you want kids? What was your last relationship like? What was this? What was that? Like you don't want to pepper with all these like huge questions. You want to see if conversation just flows naturally, if it's somebody that you'd actually want to get to know. And so it was like, I know that's kind of a weird analogy, but that's how I felt like, because I didn't know what your mannerisms would be. I didn't know like your tone or context because you don't have that. You have a picture and then you have messages. And anybody that deals a lot in relationships or working relationships, whatever type of relationship, right? When you have just a message, email, text, whatever, tone can be completely lost. So can context. Something that I think is hilarious could drop a bomb on you, or something could sound really angry, or things could come out really, misinterpreted. And that can start a whole line of miscommunication. And so when you do meet that person, in real life, then it's like, whoa, not who I thought you were going to be at all. And I wanted to really try to be as much myself and not put on any airs or put on anything because I didn't want to be a disappointment. Like if we were to ever meet in person, like,
That's funny because I had kind of the same approach, but it wasn't about being a disappointment. It was I have in different situations, as we've addressed in my background episode, I've had to be a different person depending on where I was or who I was with.
mm,
So I worked really hard on crafting this message, which um some could argue if you work too hard on it, it's not your authentic self. So I worked really hard on this first initial message, and then the next one was 100% true me of is it just me or is this weird? I went in of like, if I'm gonna know her, it's gonna be the real me. It's not gonna be this crafted version that I can perfect before I send. It's gonna
mm,
be the real me, and the real me is very awkward, very um sarcastic, you know.
yeah,
So
same.
it's funny, we both had the same approach of like, no, let's be our true self. Let's be our we never it didn't cross our minds to be who we thought the other would want. And I
Mhm.
think that made a huge difference over the last handful of years is that
Yeah,
we were ourselves from the get-go. There wasn't a facade that we had to deal with.
yeah. I think it was too like along that line is we were adults in it, but it was a blank slate. It wasn't like somebody that you went to high school with that you saw again that you're like, oh, they have these preconceived notions of who I am or whatever. Because I knew nothing about you and you didn't know anything about me, it was really a clean blank slate that we could be ourselves without any judgments or background noise telling us, well, no, she's done this before, she's done that before, right? We were able to come at that part of our lives. You were, married and settled. You were, you know, dog mom. Like, you were a mature lady at this point. And I mean,
I didn't need that.
I was still figuring stuff out, but I was in life. Like we weren't, we didn't have our parents hovering over those initial meetings. We didn't have anybody but the two of us, and people that were super close to us, like our significant others and friends, gave us the space to kind of wiggle through on our own and navigate those waters ourselves. And so I think that too kind of helped form a stronger bond than what we would have had if we were thrown together as children. Because as children, it would have been like, you're getting to know this person because mom said so, or dad said so, or court said so, right? It wouldn't have been on our own accord. And I think the fact that we were able to be empowered is what made the relationship become what it has.
Yeah.
Does this make you speechless?
Yes. All of this, which is for the
I've known you now for almost, 6 years. I don't know if this has happened. So I was just taking the moment to,
yeah, bask in it. It doesn't happen very often. Um, I just it's a lot. Even now, it has been years.
Mhm.
And looking back and thinking back and reprocessing and it feels like reliving.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's overwhelming, and I don't know if I would have done anything different.
Yeah. I do think the cool thing about doing this, creating this podcast and documenting what our relationship was and has become is such a special process because we are far enough removed, I think, that some of like the really scary thoughts and feelings kind of dissipated, because now that I know you, I can't imagine life not knowing you, right? Like I couldn't imagine an alternate universe where I receive that message and be like, this bitch is crazy. I'm not responding. This
Right.
is insane. But then, that was an option. That was a thought. Like I'm not getting involved. So it's just so weird to go down this road and really dive into what those feelings were, because there's people that are going through that today that maybe got a message like, hey, or they got their alert from ancestry.com, like,
Right.
found you a sibling. And I couldn't imagine.
I I think we ended up on the best possible scenario for it because we had all of the support
Mhm.
that we could have hoped for. We had our significant others, we had our close friends, and even our parents who might have been hesitant um, because of our, like you said, we were on our own. We weren't being hovered by our parents. We were able to separate that influence that could have been,
Mhm.
and I think that was important.
Yeah.
Uh, we really were able to make decisions for ourselves and we knew we had support and backup. Not
Yeah.
everybody gets that, and the level of play that our mental health had in that could have been very traumatizing. I didn't know if you knew about us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I was petrified. Like, I just ruined this girl's life. I don't even know her, and I just ruined her life.
Yeah. I think, yeah, if I had known nothing, because my parents could have easily have said, my dad, the man that raised me is my dad. They didn't have to tell me the truth. I would never have remembered.
No,
Never. Um, but they did. And so that's good. I mean, if circumstances had been different, I it would have been more of a shock, I think. Um, I think the shock in this scenario was more that, okay, you are a real person. You did reach out and you now know about me and are willing to pursue whatever type of relationship that I was open to at the time. It wasn't, whoa, your dad's not your dad. Whoa, you have siblings that you didn't know about. I think had I been brought up not knowing, I don't know if we'd be sitting here today,
I don't.
you know?
I don't think we would have, or if we were, it would be under very different circumstances because I would be, it'd be a whole different way that your life would be turned upside down, and I would not be. I'd be the Grim Reaper sending this message.
The messenger for sure.
Right, it would have been completely different.
Mm, yeah. And so in that aspect, like I am grateful that I knew my whole life. You know, there were always, like I had mentioned before, when we talked about our childhood, yeah, there were questions and wondering like why this person didn't want to be a part of my life. But was there ever anything wrong with me? Going through the difficulties I did with my dad's family. But I feel like now it's so funny that, I mean, everything happens for a reason. Had they kept all these things from me on my end, I wouldn't have been open to a relationship. We wouldn't be sitting here today. And so, would I now trade any of those experiences to live in a blissful la la land until you would come and ruin it? I don't think so. Did that make any sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I thought so.
I'm still working on my cold and flu. So,
Totally fine.
well, yeah, those first few days, weeks, months, I think it took us months to actually like FaceTime or talk on the phone.
That was anxiety inducing. I mean, I have an anxiety disorder, so that doesn't help. But I think for a normal a normal level person, that would
Yeah,
also be anxiety. I mean,
for sure. For sure. Do you remember what that first like FaceTime conversation was like?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
I remember I wore a hat because I had done my hair 3 different times and it wasn't working. And I was mad and I threw a hat on. And I think at that point, I've gone through a lot of hair colors. My hair is naturally, it's kind of coming in a copper auburn. And I think I was blonde at that point.
Yeah.
So we both were blonde. And my husband was in the back.
Yeah.
He's so funny. Whether it's appropriate or not, he's my peanut gallery. And so he was in the back, and every once in a while he would just shout, "Oh my God, you're the same person!" All the time. Like, shut up. She has to think we're normal. Shut up. It, it's different. It's the difference with tone and text. And like, I can at least hit backspace. I can't backspace your ass. Stop
Yeah.
it. And like every 10 minutes, God, you guys are the same.
Yeah. And he
And
couldn't even really see like faces and expressions. He could just hear us talking, our like verbal expressions, our tone, like how we sound. And it was so weird because my entire life, my mom's always teased me because my eyebrow goes up. Like
this
when
one
I'm
was the one.
thinking,
Yeah. It's true. You can't see them right now because I didn't draw them in.
Yeah, I have to color mine in too, otherwise you can't see them. You
That's
just see
what
my
I've got right now.
muscles
You
going up
just
and
see my
down.
mine's just my wrinkles. My forehead wrinkles go up.
Yeah, I need Botox. But it was always just kind of a tease, like, oh, the eyebrow went up. What are you thinking? Or she doesn't like that idea, or, you know. And we were doing something and you just went and lifted your eyebrow. And I thought to myself, that was like the first thing I remember talking to my mom the first after I talked to you. I was like, her eyebrow, she lifts her eyebrow. And she was like, see, it didn't come from me.
I like how she didn't want credit for your sass. You're sassy all on your own, honey.
Yeah, see, it didn't come from me. But it was those types of things that it was very, very odd. And well, I don't want to say odd, maybe more surreal. Like I wasn't expecting to experience that kind of similarities. Um, the other similarity that we learned really quickly was love for animals. I mean, everybody loves animals, but not to the extent, and if they don't, like, we don't need them in our lives,
Fair enough.
but to the extent of I knew I was going to work at SeaWorld. There was no doubt in my mind. I went to camp there and all those things, the summers of high school, college, like I was building towards a career in animal training. And you're like, oh, I used to want to be a sea lion trainer or something like that at SeaWorld. And I was like,
Yeah. I've been a dog trainer since I was 17. And you were like, "Oh yeah, I was into this at SeaWorld," and I'm over here like, "Wow, what are the odds?" I've wanted to transition into sea lions from dogs, and it was like, "Oh gosh," because everybody's like, "Oh, I've done this, I've done that, I've dipped into that." And I'm like, "Oh my God, wait a minute, she's serious." The animal psychology gene is strong, which is weird because that doesn't run in the family,
yeah.
by the
And
way.
yeah. And then we learned like my major in college was the same as your dad's. I studied communications and um, ended up going into PR and communications. Ended up on the music side versus animal training. So I still sometimes question my life choices. Like I'm sitting sometimes at work. I'm like, oh man, I could be at SeaWorld right now. You know,
Yeah, that could be with
snuggle
a
with the
harbor seal.
fish. But yeah, and so there were like those similarities, and then seeing you was just wild. I don't even know how else to explain it, but it was the most surreal feeling because I hadn't ever really had anybody that looked like me in my family before. And so it was just a whole new like, whoa, you know?
Yeah. It was the same for me. It was so weird, very weird. And being raised mostly in Arizona, I've got a lot of cultural influence from that. So,
Mhm.
um, like when I say some Spanish words, sometimes it comes out with a really thick accent, even though I look like what I look like. But I was raised by so many Midwesterners, and that it's in my core is Midwestern, even though like my mom's side of the family's from Maine. It the similarities in cultures is still very heavily there. So like if the more I'm with my family, the more my Midwestern accent comes out, or sometimes it'll slip and everybody's like, you literally weren't raised there. What is your problem? And at talking to you, you're so damn Minnesotan that
Yeah. And
my
that was in Nashville almost 10 years.
yeah, but did you notice when we spoke, we both like by the end of the call, our accent was really heavy
Yeah. Yeah.
because I think we were feeding off of each other. Of I heard some of it in you, And so I picked up on it right away. Like I'll still say soda for soda
Oh
pop.
yeah. Oh
Boy.
yeah. Oh yeah, you betcha.
So like by the end of the call, it was like we were just in the middle of St. Paul hanging out, you know. Um, what's the Midwesterner guy on TikTok? He's my hero. Of you know you're a Midwesterner when. Oh, well, I'll send you those today and it'll make
Okay.
your so um for me it was eerie of I've always said like we need to be a case study for nature versus nurture because there's no reason we should have been as similar as we were. In my mind, it was there's why is she the same person as me? Why are we so similar? And I think our dissimilarities were either non-existent or didn't matter for quite some time.
Yeah, I think because our differences are so minor compared to our similarities. Like I feel like our similarities, even though we were raised very different, um, we value family the same, right? We have a deep love and protectiveness and support for the people that we care about. Which includes the animals. We have like an assuredness, but still not quite sure about ourselves that I think that we'll always have. Like we want to be like these powerhouses, like, but there's still like that. I don't even know how to explain it. Just kind of that knowing we are different than others, whether that's because of the way our brains work, because we're not neurotypical,
Right.
or just that we've had different experiences than what other people have had. We were in the same spot kind of in our lives as far as like how we were, settling down, starting our own lives, moving away from family, those types of things. And so those are overarching themes that I think carried us into building that relationship. And so our differences kind of went to the side a little bit. But now I think as we've gotten to know each other, I think it's the differences that kind of bring us the most joy and laughter, right? Like, well, that's just Cayla, you
Yeah.
know? That's how Cayla rolls. And I'm sure there's times where you're like, okay, whatever you say.
My
That's cool.
go-to is when I get a text like frickin' Lisa. And and it's always with love. It's always with love and acceptance of it. It's just um those moments are so far and few between, I feel like.
Yeah. But I do think now, like, because we had such a strong bond over what was important to us inherently and just those types of things, it made it easier to accept the differences, you know?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Life is crazy.
It's a trip. It's a trip, and sometimes we go off the map.
Right. And
Like
so, like,
stay in
I,
June.
but yeah, so now, like, when I think back to those, like, first, like, conversations, those text messages, the first few video chats, those types of things, like, in a way, it feels so far removed from where we are now and who we are now. For quite a while, I feel like about 2.5 years before we decided to dive in and actually like meet each other in person. And I know location played a lot to do that. You were, you know, across the country and we had just moved back to Minnesota. So it was the first time that made sense, to get together.
Well, especially since um almost right up until that point, your existence wasn't public knowledge to that side of the family of mine anyway. So distance was one factor, but you also weren't real.
Okay.
That's a whole can of worms.
And I say we open those can of worms, but let's open it the next time we all get together.
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Sounds good. Well, thank you guys for joining us once again and for being a part of our little family here at My Surprise Sister. And we will see you soon with more drama and probably a lot more fun and laughs.
That's what we're here for. Bye.